Alright, people, prophecy time. While eating a chicken butty. Right. I knew this, because it's obvious, when I was 20. However, when I was a young man, I had young man syndrome, and I had an imbalance of energy in my expressions, perception, and way of approaching anything. It's a self-righteous, pretentious idea that you have a theoretical idea of what you should be, but it doesn't necessarily represent what your nature actually is at a present point. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't aim for those ideals, but in order to actually evolve, you must acknowledge the present, which is something that I've embraced better at this present moment. You know, I believe I've gone forwards, but funnily enough, a lot of people wouldn't interpret it that way because it involves shadow work. And I'm dovetailing off here. This is an important point that I will reiterate. Some people have this idea that the perfect person isn't capable of very dark things. I'm not necessarily saying evil, I mean things that require force, violence, certain forms of strategic manipulation. I'll put it this way. If you think about things in an unrelative way, like I respect Jordan Peterson, but he said something that I misunderstood when I first heard it. He said, always tell the truth and face the consequences for doing so. Now, initially, my attitude towards that statement was like, well, that makes a lot of sense because I've lied in the past and I know that it's wrong for multiple reasons. I'm not going to I could go into depth about a load of different things, but it'll just chain off into a load of nonsense, so we'll stick to the point here. There's relative situations where you should lie, and I use this example. If you are a soldier and you get captured, somebody's questioning you. If you immediately give up the mission, then whoever your opposition, the people who are tormenting you, no longer have any use for you. They reckon, we've got enough. Fucking kill them. They might keep you alive, but, all this Geneva Convention sort of stuff, like, I mean, when you're at war, like, how many people are actually going to stick by that? You know what I mean? There's people dying left and right, like, at some point. You know what I'm saying? Not always going to be the case, is it? You're probably going to get killed. So the SAS would tell you, give them little pieces over time and don't make it easy for them. Oh man. And you can act like mental, but in that is manipulation. You're manipulating the situation. Is it a bad thing? Why are you doing it? Do you know what the word man actually comes from? Hand. Man, hand, manipulate. You manipulate physical matter with fingers and thumbs. So, the ability to do so is a necessity. But manipulation is a relative term. It's not necessarily always negative. And the same applies to what people consider the dark triad traits. Now, I've met a lot of people and I've seen it ridden on social media, this kind of mindset that I'm going to get into here. The idea that there are definitive narcissists, psychopaths, and empaths and all this sort of nonsense. when you understand your mind to a certain degree, you understand that in a reactive situation, you can be any of those that I've just mentioned. And those are just they're just categories. How do you know that we've even divided it correctly? Those are logical categories to describe something that is very, very complex. Words don't describe reality necessarily completely accurately. They do a job. It's not perfect. So theoretical understanding is not complete understanding, and that is what the education system often gets wrong. Yeah. So, a bit awkward now. I'm not alone. Step outside your comfort zone. Right. What was I talking about? See, this is what I'm saying. I want to get to the point here. You let pressures and situations get to you, and it's not that big of a deal. Like, I've done this before, but it always comes creeping back. The necessity to constantly wrestle with discomfort, it never goes away. It's like a muscle, you have to use it. I like dancing. This is another chaotic video, inevitably. I like dancing, and I also like shifting my energy around my body and all that sort of thing. So I figure if I do that like throughout the day, wherever I'm going, whoever I'm around, I'm getting stronger mentally and physically just by doing stuff. And people are going to look at you weird, but if you're growing, you're growing. Why not? Are they right because they're acting in societally sensible ways? Am I stupid to be making this video and sort of feeling like a twat with people knocking about? No, I don't think so. But I have something in me that makes me uncomfortable when I do it. And the more you do it, the less you give a shit. So here I am. Anybody will tell you that the first time a fighter gets into the ring, or the first time somebody gets on stage to perform something, you get dry mouth, your nerves, you're shaking, your mind's recoiling. But over time, you learn to deal with it. So what was the original point that I was going to get to here? I don't want this to be too long. I can't even remember. Relativity. Right? See, this is what happens to me. I go down a chain of pathways and forget the actual point that I originally had. But does that matter? Was the original point even worth talking about? Maybe because I just say things. So maybe the point I've arrived at is better than the point I initially wanted to express.